I24 News, a community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is trying to come to grips with the mass shooting this weekend inside a synagogue. 11 people were killed. The funerals are about to begin.
We will survive this, and we will be stronger, but we will never be the same.
189 people are feared dead after a passenger plane in Indonesia crashed into the ocean minutes after takeoff. It's the third major air disaster in the region in 4 years. Plus,
in Brazil, far-right politician Jair Bolsonaro has won that country's presidential election. Analysts are comparing him to Donald Trump.
From the I24 News studios in Times Square in New York, this is Crossroads with David Schuster and Tal Heinrich.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, community leaders and residents are vowing to come together and stay strong after that deadly attack this weekend on a synagogue.
11 people were killed when the gunman opened fire Saturday during what was supposed to be a happy family gathering for a baby naming ceremony. Correspondent Maggie Rulli has more.
And I'm hearing people screaming, and it's seared in my brain. I can't erase that tape.
Rabbi Jeffrey Myers says he will never forget the horror that happened inside this synagogue on Saturday morning.
I immediately announced to my congregation, drop to the floor, do not move, don't utter a sound, be still.
The gunman then opened fire on the congregation as they gathered for services. The FBI says the shooter hurled words of hate against Jews as he murdered them. Police say that man is 46-year-old Robert Bowers. He appeared before a federal judge today in a wheelchair to face charges that he killed 11 people, setting in motion plans for federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty.
And rest assured, we have a team of prosecutors working hard to ensure that justice is done.
This is where Bowers will now be held. His neighbors say they never suspected anything, but it's his online world that reveals a different story. Posts like this one, calling Jews the children of Satan on the fringe social media site Gab, which has become popular among white supremacists and other alt-right activists and white nationalists who believe mainstream sites like Facebook and Twitter censor their radical views. As authorities continue to investigate, Rabbi Myers says he's now left planning funerals.
I have a job to do. I have a congregation to tend, and I'm here. And I'm here for them.
that was Maggie Rulli reporting. Let's turn now to our senior Washington correspondent, Dan Raviv, who is live outside the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Dan, we're learning that President Trump is expected to go to Pittsburgh on Tuesday. Some Jewish leaders of the community there said that he's not really welcome.
Tal, there are mixed opinions, but we're mostly hearing negative opinions. We haven't taken a scientific poll, but as I24 News speaks with some of the neighbors of this conservative synagogue, where 3 congregations meet, and members of all 3 were murdered when 11 people were killed on Saturday. When we speak to some of the neighbors here, again and again, we were hearing President Trump should not come. Some people are frankly anti-Trump, or they feel after the violence here that he somehow added to the tension and the divisions in American society. In fact, there's an online petition that tens of thousands of people have signed, including many people in this area, that tell President Trump don't come. And that's just around the time that the White House announced he would come. The President and the First Lady, Melania, to be here in Pittsburgh. The itinerary not yet announced. Perhaps he'll go to the hospital and see the wounded, including some police officers. And won't he probably come here? A lot of public officials and leaders of the Jewish community from all over the world have come here to the murder scene. A lot of people have left flowers. It's become a memorial site. Tal and David.
Dan, you've been there since Saturday. What strikes you in terms of the mood and the themes that you've witnessed on this day?
It's a terrific city, a terrific neighborhood. I've known that in the past. We're in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. Population about 15,000, and people really turn out to show they are united. Even if you're not Jewish, you appreciate the Jewish community here. We hear that again and again. And we've seen all sorts of proof. I mean, just the announcement from the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh that they would start raising money, and that's gone way past $74,000 being donated to help the victims here and to even help that synagogue synagogue behind me repair what apparently are countless bullet holes inside. So I think the sense of unity and trying, well, just to emphasize the niceness and Pittsburgh strong and how that defeats one almost anonymous truck driver whom no one knew but turned out to be an anti-Semite and mass murderer. David and Tal.
Dan Raviv, our senior Washington correspondent, reporting live from the Squirrel Hood neighborhood in Pittsburgh. Dan, thank you. And for more, let's bring in Ambassador Danny Danon, Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations. And Danny, there's this question that keeps being asked in Pittsburgh. Is this isolated, or is this part of a larger strand of anti-Semitism that has been emerging in the United States? Do you have a view on that?
Good evening. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism is on the rise in Europe and in the United States. We saw that on social media, all over the internet, and we're paying a heavy price for that. And I think it is time to take action. It is time not only to speak against anti-Semitism, but to act against anti-Semitism. I think first thing we should think about security in synagogues. It's unfortunate. We saw that in Europe, in France, for example, you will not enter a synagogue without going through some kind of a security check. I think we are entering a reality today in the U.S. that you will need to add security to every synagogue in the U.S. And the second point is social media. I believe that we should monitor potential murderers. We saw what happened a few days ago in Pittsburgh, what happened 3 years ago in a church in Charleston. I think the authorities must find a way, a legal, ethical way, to monitor those who call for violence on the web.
This attack took place in Pittsburgh, but reactions pouring in from Israel, it's just as if it has taken place in some city around the country. How do you explain that?
We are one people. We feel the pain of the people of Pittsburgh, and unfortunately, we have experienced those kind of attacks. I recall when I was Deputy Minister of Defense in 2014, and when I had to enter a synagogue after a massacre in Jerusalem. This is horrible. We hug the community, we pray with them, and we know that we are together, and we will prevail together.
Is there a single way that the community of Pittsburgh can start to move on? I mean, given the experience that Israel has had, unfortunately, with this, how do you move on from this?
So in the Jewish tradition, we have the Shiva, the 7 days that we take our time, we mourn together, we don't speak about the future. That's what we are doing today. And I think after a week, we will sit down with the authorities here in the U.S., the Jewish community leaders, and we will think about the future.
Danny, Israel's chief Ashkenazi rabbi, he refused to call the Tree of Life a synagogue, although Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a tweet, he said that Jews were killed in a synagogue. He made it very clear. But the majority of American Jews are liberal, and that's only a bit of the greater rift between them and the Israeli right-wing government. How do you see the process of starting to bridge this gap?
The Israeli people are standing with the Jewish community. Today, we don't have left or right. We don't have Orthodox, Reform, or Conservative. We are one people. And this coward, when he entered the synagogue, he came to this place because he knew he will find Jewish people praying in this holy place. So we are together with the people of Pittsburgh today.
But you can understand why a lot of American Jews who might hear of the chief rabbi in Israel saying this might be disillusioned by his comments.
No, I think those who understand and know Israel, they know exactly what the Israelis are thinking. And we are a democracy, so you have so many opinions, but the vast majority of Israelis are hugging the community and are with the community today.
I believe that in your position, you probably hear more personal stories from people about anti-Semitism. What concerns you the most when you talk to people here in different communities around the United States?
I think it's unfortunate today, in 2018, that you feel anti-Semitism everywhere. Sometimes when you go to a college campus, even here in New York City, you will hear anti-Semitism. I feel it at the corridors of the UN. And I think we should not allow it to become part of our life. We should call it, we should fight it. And, you know, hearing Louis Farrakhan only a few days ago speaking against the Jews, so I don't think we should ignore those who attack the Jewish people here in America.
But you would agree it's not just on the left and not just on the right, it's across the political spectrum.
Absolutely. It has nothing to do with politics. And by the way, we had to face anti-Semitism ages ago. Today is a new form of anti-Semitism. They're using social media. And I think the next stage for us, the next challenge, is to deal with anti-Semitism on the web.
Ambassador Danon, we're going to take a short break, but you're staying with us because we want your take on recent developments across the Middle East.
And still ahead, in the wake of this weekend's shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Iran and the terror group Hamas have extended their condolences to the victims and their families. What does the ambassador think about that?
Plus, a new report claims Britain knew of the plot to kidnap journalist Jamal Khashoggi and begged Saudi Arabia to abort the plan.